Welcome to Coffee with Viking. I am Mike. Cheers. And I came across something the other day that got my attention. It was this book here, which has 8 different subjects in it to apply the faithfulness of Daniel. Yes, Daniel, the guy who was thrown in the lion's den, untouched. And it's about, if I read the description right when I placed the order, it's about applying his faithfulness to our own lives and how to live for God as strongly as he did. And this is for not only personal studies, but for also group studies too. So I thought I would add this here and go through this with you guys. There is some of this I won't be able to do though, because I don't have the app downloaded to do the online part of the study. But I think that's more for the personal studies too. So we'll go ahead, we'll dive into it. And it's called Daniel, Faithful in the Fire. Okay, the first session is called Faithful. The book of Daniel is about to be a faithful witness in a dark and hostile environment. You see, unlike other books in the Bible, this book was not written from inside Israel. In the first few verses of Daniel, we learn that God's people had been taken into exile following the reign of King Solomon. Israel was struck in a downward spiral of unbelief, compromise, and disobedience. God warned Israel, and they continued to walk this path. He would send them into exile, and so in 605 BC, God kept his promise. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon laid siege of Jerusalem and took the best and brightest from Israel back to Babylon, where they would serve the king who conquered them. This is where the book of Daniel begins, and yet the book doesn't take us further down the spiral. Rather, it shows us that even in the middle of a sinful culture, godly men can follow God and thrive no matter where he's placed them. The book of Daniel is a manual for how to thrive in Babylon, which we are pretty much living in a modern day Babylon right now. The key idea, we can be faithful in Babylon. So we can be faithful even when serving the Lord is not a popular thing. Even when we disagree with the world and live for Christ, we become the enemy of the world. We can still be faithful and hold strong into that faith. Okay, here at the start, there's a question. Where is the most difficult place you've had to live out your faith? Well, for me, that's an easy one. It's where my faith started. It was back in that 10 years of homelessness when I finally broke down, and let's just say I went through a few things, but got my answer that God really is there. He proved his existence to me, and let's just say the years after that, while working to get back on my feet, were some of the most difficult times. But God stayed faithful to me, and I stayed faithful to him, even though I slipped up a few times like we all do. But the question I have for you is, and you don't have to answer this one to me, but just think about it. Where was the hardest place you had to hold your faith? The next question, what do you think it means to live out your faith at work, in your hobbies, or in your relationships? I believe it means to not put anything above God, to stay faithful to him first, and everything will be taken care of. Whether it be your job, if you're working for a promotion, whether it be your hobbies, or whether it be a relationship that's kind of rocky, or even if it's going really good, always put God first. The book of Daniel is the story of a young Hebrew man abducted from his country and his home to go and serve the wicked king who conquered his people. The book of Daniel doesn't give us a play-by-play of the Babylonian invasion, but we know from history and from other places in the Bible that the Babylonians were ruthless, ambitious warriors. They didn't just come in and take over. They used all their instruments of war to bring Judah into submission. Killings, torture, starvation. Imagine being in Daniel's place. It would be difficult to thrive in that setting. But that's just what Daniel did. And that's what God is calling all of us to do. Daniel helps men answer the question, what does faithfulness to God look like in a secular realm controlled by secular powers at war with the gospel? Daniel, it would have been even harder to hold on to faith because of all he had to go through. But he still did. And I believe if we could get our faith where Daniel's was, that it would be unbreakable, that even the devil himself would flee, because it is just too much work to even try to break even a small thread of that faith. Now it tells us to read Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain to the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability to them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, and at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and of Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. While in Babylon, a city in modern-day Iraq, the Bible also talks about Babylon as a spiritual reality that we all inhabit. When have ye felt like a culture you live in is a kind of Babylon? When Daniel and his friends were taken to Babylon, their names were changed to reflect Babylonian culture and heritage. And how does the culture we live in seek to conform you to its ways? What are some ways this particularly affects men? It appears that these young men accepted their Babylonian names without conflict. How does that challenge our assumption of what faithfulness looks like in a sinful culture? How do we determine which part of our culture to accept and which parts to reject? Well, that one's easy. We'll accept the ones that don't go against God and His holy word. But if it conflicts with His holy word, then there is no compromise. It is always God first. But while we are living in a highly sinful culture, we can still stand strong in the faith while accepting the things that do not go against God and His holy word, but not compromising our faith and our love for God with the sinful culture. It is just knowing the difference between what goes against God and what doesn't. In the last verse they give us to read in this study, Daniel 12:3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Why is ordinary faithfulness to God attractive and noticeable in a dark culture? Can you think of any examples of someone who has shined in Babylon? What challenges do you face being a faithful witness in the places God has called you? What does it look like to practice? What does it look like practically to focus on the promise from this verse when it seems like the world is forcing us to make a choice between faithfulness and compromise? What remaining questions or comments do you have about this session's teaching? What was challenging, convicting, encouraging, or timely for your current circumstances? And I want you all to answer these questions to yourself as I will do the same. And I want to close this out with a prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, please give us the wisdom to know when we should compromise, when it's not sinful, and when not to compromise because it goes against you. And please give us the strength to stand firm in your word, regardless of the hate we will get doing it. Please help us to stand strong in our faith and in our love for you. And please keep us going. Please be our strength every day that you bless us with. Amen. Stay blessed. Stay caffeinated. Stand strong like Daniel did. Much love.